In progress.
Evening, we do not have any. That'll bring us to our boards and committees of council reporting. The Hinton Youth Advisory Council 2020-2021 review. Interim CAO Howard. Administration.
Are the youth members joining us in person or online? Sorry, I don't see any.
Maverick.
Okay, thank you. There we are. All right. So Tori, my apologies. I'm not sure if you're going to introduce the team there or not. So I'll pass that over to you, and then we'll go through the presentation. Thanks.
Sure. So we have the Hinton Youth Advisory Council doing our year-end review presentation today. We have Maverick presenting as one of the youth and James Everett as one of the coordinators. So.
Awesome. Do I present, or do we have the presentation there for them?
It's up to you. We can share the screen here, or you can share the screen there and then control your conversation. Okay.
Yeah. So we're just here joined with Maverick Cortez, and we're just going to do a review of the 2021 Hinton Youth Advisory Council and how our year went, and the obstacles we encountered with COVID, and how we overcame them, and what we ended up doing. So let me just start here. I'll start by just giving a brief overview of the counselors, the youth counselors that we had. So we have Liam Baxter, who did his second term and he's now finished, and then Maverick Cortez, Ethan Jank, who's done his second term and is off to post-secondary, Cadence Rogiani, and she's done her second term with us. And then Lila Underwood finished her second term, but she's gone off to post-secondary as well. And she went off for kind of the council atmosphere and politics. So it was kind of a nice little learning curve for her to understand the youth council and whatnot. So, and then the helpers that we had were the counselor Joanne Race and Counselor Dooley Nelson. And then Amanda Yaworski, who works with GYPSV and the off-campus learning there. She's a teacher. And then myself, I'm the youth center coordinator, James Everett. Madison Sherman is the museum director, I guess. She would handle things at the museum. And then Jenna Altroge was our past FCS assistant, and Tori is her new kind of replacement. So in the future, Tori will be helping us, but in the past, Jenna helped us. So just want to give her acknowledgement as well. And this is kind of the team that we had assembled for when we were doing our online meetings during the pandemic, because we couldn't meet in person. So just a screenshot of some of us. I think this was right after we got our like youth merchant, like the swag rather. So everybody was representing the sweater, and it was really good quality sweater, and they really enjoyed them. So maybe I'll let Maverick speak on this.
Hi, I'm Maverick, and I'm going to tell you how COVID-19 impacted how we went along with our meetings and the overall flow of the council. Every month we met the third Thursday. We met in person for the first couple, but then for the rest we had to move to virtual meetings. Connecting and planning our attempts to help the community were very challenging because we couldn't meet in person and decide how we're going to go with it. So we had to do it online, which is challenge with connecting and people showing up. We didn't get to go out into the community and help as much as we did because of all the lockdown and everything being canceled. And our engaging with our community was also limited because of the same reasons.
Yeah, so just going off of that, I mean, it was a pretty challenging year for everybody involved, just because we were trying to adapt to the online style, along with the burnout that everybody was going through, and just the fatigue. And I think everybody was a little wasn't right. It wasn't the same every day, and just things came up. And when you're doing the presentation or when you're doing the youth advisory meetings from home, it's just not necessarily the same atmosphere. You don't get the same collaboration as in person, I feel. So that was a pretty big struggle. So we look forward to being able to meet in person again, and the youths get a meal out of it. So that's a little incentive to them, and they love that as well. Okay, going on to the next slide. So Maverick, here you go.
This is what we did very well this year. We this year was a lot of what are we going to try to plan for next year and moving on with this. So we try as much as we can to make plans for everything to meet the guidelines for COVID-19. Also, we helped people kind of oh geez.
You're on the fostering a desire to continue. You're on the second one. Yeah, so this is kind of what we were talking about with Lila Underwood. She went to post-secondary for political science, and she really enjoyed being involved in the community, and she enjoyed just being in this group and being able to have her say, and then being able to continue that and have that on her resume and whatnot. So that's kind of what we were meaning by the second point there.
We did get our volunteer hours in. We helped with the drive-in movies, helped the museum clean up and get ready for its new opening. And we did start a Facebook and Instagram account that has been really well received, and continuously posting new content on those accounts. We are still trying to get engaged with our community and showing how the youth council can help show kids how the politics work.
Yeah, exactly. So as soon as we were able to, with the restrictions, once the restrictions came and when we're a bit lax, we had some of the youths go out there and do whether it be volunteering with the museum to help them do some gardening or cleaning up around town. We see in the picture here, this was regional. We partnered with the YRAF, Regional Arts Festival, and did a silent auction and tried to get them some fundraising, and we had a couple of the members volunteer for that to get their hours in. So yeah, with COVID it was a bit tricky because normally we would love to be at events like the Foon Festival and stuff that all got kind of canceled or postponed, but we tried to make the best out of it. Here we go.
this is kind of the timeline since we last met. Um, in October, there were 6 kids who applied, and all of them joined. Then from November to January, we kind of planned on how we were trying to do everything. We met online and said, like, what do you want to do with, like, what do you want to do? Uh, like, you want to do social media? We did. There was helping reach out to show all the programs. That was the big one for social media, and other things. And currently, recruitment for the next year of youth council underway.
Yeah, so in the middle here is the November to January is kind of where we struggled a little bit, just because we had set up, we had sat down, we kind of set up a strategy of things we wanted to tackle, but then we were hit with the restrictions. So we just had to figure out ways we could work in the community by abiding with the restrictions and whatnot. So that was a bit of a challenge, but yeah, in the end, we did try to adjust for it, and now we're just on to the recruitment for the next year, and we're hoping that it will be a nice, fresh, clean slate.
Here we had 3 groups doing different projects, and these were the 3. Like I said, there was youth awareness through social media, trying to get youth aware of all the programs and services that are available to the youth and that they can do and be a part of the community. Safety for COVID-19 in the schools and with parents. Make sure that everybody knows and is aware of all the new things that are continuously changing throughout the COVID-19 process. And the volunteer completion, about how we had very little opportunities to volunteer because most of our big events were canceled. So we had to, once we were able to, we got all the ones that we wanted to, and all the council members did various things around the town, like the YRAF festival, like James said. The there was some kids helped Madison clean up and the museum to be ready for its opening launch, and among other things. Then
Yeah, so they were all able to complete their volunteer hours, and we tried to make our social media presence a bit more known, just because we know a lot of the youth themselves use Instagram, but a lot of their parents use Facebook. So we've been trying to hit both of them so we could hit both targets and just spread awareness. And as for the schools, we kind of went in there with some posters. We designed up some posters and just information around COVID and just from Alberta Health and whatnot, just to spread awareness and do our part to just let people know this is what could happen and how they could avoid it, hand washing and all that, among other things. So, and then this is our Instagram and our Facebook. And then we've also just got a general website on the Hinton website. So multiple ways to reach us. And yeah, that's the presentation. Do any of you guys have questions for us?
Well, Maverick, James, and Tori, thank you so much for the presentation today and seeing the successes and the movement going forward is great to see. So with that, I'll open up the council. Any questions or comments? Councilor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, thanks, guys, for coming tonight and giving us an overview. I know it's been a struggle, with everything. I think all of us are experiencing that, but really appreciate the efforts and setting up for the future as well. Not just thinking of COVID and dealing with it, but then what comes next. So I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to see who else joins the team this year. I see the signs are up. I see the Facebook messages are out there being shared. So I'm hoping that students take part in getting involved in this committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. For myself, thank you to the entire committee, but specifically Maverick and all the youths on the committee for having the desire and the courage to be part of this and opening yourself up to something that generally a lot of people kind of stay away is really commendable at your age. So we really appreciate your effort. We hope it didn't scare you too much from politics, but it's nice to see the successes, the goals, the moving forward, the challenges with COVID, and you adjusting. So we really appreciate all your effort. I do want to thank Councilor Nelson and Councilor Race for their participation and administration. But we look forward to building off this, and we appreciate your time. And with that, Council, anything further? And seeing none, again, thank you for tonight. We wish you success in the future, and thanks for joining us. All right, Council, that'll bring us to our action items for this evening. The first one, non-residential tax incentive bylaw 1161, third reading, interim CEO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. So this item is before council to consider third reading. Back on September 21st, the Standing Committee did receive the proposed draft bylaw, and so we've made those changes, and we're coming before regular council to consider third reading. I do have Mr. Scott Kovach, as well as a couple other staff supporting this item if you have any further questions, but council's seen this a couple times, and hopefully it reflects what you've directed administration to add and delete, and we can answer any questions now.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Council, I have Councilor Hawes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to move that council give non-residential property tax incentive bylaw 1161 third reading. And if I may speak to it, thank you. Appreciate the administration's work on this, and I think we've come to a great place where businesses currently can still apply for it. It's built and into the future as well. And I'm excited about this to see what the potential might lead to for us in Hinton. We've got a lot of different things that could potentially bring in businesses that will benefit from this tax incentive. So I think it's a great move forward. Excited to see and hope to have support from council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any questions, comments? For myself, I'll be speaking in favor of this. I want to thank council for moving this forward. This is one, I think, a very important step in potentially growing our community and attracting investors, current ones also to grow. To me, this is long overdue, and I'm really pleased that council will be moving forward with this today. And I do want to give a thank you to administration. We were set with the challenge of potentially not including people in 2021, and that conversation was quite easy, and finding a way to bring that information forward to council and to make that smooth will help bridge the gap for those who have already invested in our community. And I think this is makes it an even better sell for everyone. So I'm very pleased, and I'll be speaking in favor of this. Council, any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council give non-residential tax incentive bylaw 1161 third reading. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything else for this item this evening? Seeing none, thank you, administration. That'll bring us to our second item, council procedural bylaw 1153, interim CEO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. So this procedure bylaw, again, Standing Committee has seen it in the past. As recently as September 21st, they did make a couple of directions. One is to remove that the join in debate on a question or form section 16.5. And a couple other items around to reflect the allowance for clarifying questions prior to a motion being on the floor, and just to strengthen that wording pertaining to debate and discussion, as well as to add the mover of the main motion that can make the first amendment to section 15. There is one item that administration has incorporated all of those with the exception of one, and that is the committee directed administration to remove the join in the debate on the question. And the reason for that is that's been left in, stating that if the mayor or chair wishes to put a motion properly before council, he or she shall vacate the chair and request the deputy mayor or some other member of council to take that chair. So that section has been removed entirely, as section 10.4 outlines the process for when the chair wishes to make a motion. So we have the report author here as Ms. Rendell, if you have any questions. Otherwise, we are proposing that this bylaw receive first, second reading, unanimous consent for third reading and third reading. And as a reminder, council can modify the bylaw further after first reading.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Council, any questions or direction? Councilor Haas.
I'd like to move that council give council procedure bylaw 1153 first reading, please.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. Council, we have first reading on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council give procedural bylaw 1153 first reading. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Councilor Magoon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move that council give council procedural bylaw number 1153 second reading.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councilor Nelson.
Are we able to ask questions at this point? So my question is on page 53, section 5.4.12. It's really limited what directions we can make at committee of the whole. And if I look up above at 5.4.8, it talks about including but not limited to. But 5.4.12, I think we commonly make a lot of directions that wouldn't fit either though any of those three matters. So I'm just concerned that it might greatly limit what we've been doing at standing committee over the last 4 years.
Is that a question for administration?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. What have we been doing that these only three options for motions would restrict us from doing?
Administration?
Can you hear me? So this received legal opinion, and a lot of the things, like a committee of the whole meeting isn't meant to be ran like a council meeting or anything like that. It's just, it's supposed to be general discussion. And so you could receive information, refer matters to administration or committee, or direct administration to prepare a report or anything like that. So some of the things, it's basically kind of what you do now. Make recommendations or you direct administration to do things. So I don't know how else you would want it changed. And also if it did get changed, it should go back to legal again for another review, probably for that section for sure.
Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, I think it might be something we just want to flag. It might create some challenges in the future if we're actively following our bylaws to the letter at which they state. I do think this is overall, I don't think it's a reason to hold up this document, because if we don't give it third reading today, then it gets passed over the next council, and I do think this creates a lot of clarification. But for those that are on the next council, they might want to potentially looking at an amendment before they start coming across things that maybe don't fit those 3 points. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. I do agree with Councilor Nelson that section that pertains to C, to direct administration to prepare, as long as the intent, and I guess that's the clarifying question to administration, in rereading that, that is the intent when we take something that is, there's already a report prepared for committee of the whole, and we just want to bring that forward for council to decide. That is the intent with section C, that it'll either create a new report or it'll bring the already created report that council's considering at committee of the whole to come to council. And if I read it that way with that understanding, then I'm better, because that's essentially what we do. Is that the understanding for section C, administration?
That is correct. So it's really most of the directions that come out of the committee of the whole should be that this report be brought to regular for decision discussion with the direction administration.
Perfect. Thank you. Council, We have a direction on the floor. Any further questions before I call second reading? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council give procedural bylaw 1153 second reading. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, Councilor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I'd like to move that council give procedure bylaw number 1153 unanimous consent for third reading. Can I speak to it quickly? Yeah, in reference to Councillor Nelson's concern, I think there's likely some other things that as new council and future councils move through this, there may be a few things that they find challenging. But I think as a whole, the document's much better, much clearer, gives future councils a much better idea of the procedures to follow. I think it's a much better document than the one we've been working with. The one we've been working with, it was likely, fine when it was created, but it's been amended so many times that it became confusing. This is much better, much clearer. I'd be much happier to receive this document as a new councillor than the one we previously had. That said, if there are issues that are making it cumbersome to work within this, it's only an amendment to fix it. So I think moving it forward today is great, and it'll give new council a great document to work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stashik. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council give procedural bylaw 1153 unanimous consent for third reading. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, Councilor Magoon.
I'd like to move that council give council procedural bylaw number 1153 third reading.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councilor Nelson.
So I'm just going to ask one more question, kind of in relation. In looking at our minutes that we have, just in our agenda package from standing. So one of the most directions we made at standing was something like that committee direct administration to bring back a draft letter of support. I guess that's to regular. So yeah, I think there's going to be some stuff that we're going to have to hammer out with this, but hopefully the next council can make those amendments and not be tripped up too much by them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. I want to take a moment to thank the other committee members and administration. We really went through the entire procedural bylaw. I think we discussed and debated every section pretty much, and from a philosophical standpoint and what we work in best practice. So it was quite enjoyable, and as Councilor Stashik said, I think this is much better to present to the next council than what we're currently working with. So with that, I'll be in support. Council, anything further before I call this a question? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council give council procedural bylaw 1153 third reading. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this action item? There is another option. There's nothing else from council. And seeing none, I'll move on to number 3, the rescinding policy 18, harassment in the work environment policy. Council or CEO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Through to council. So this report will be the first time that you've seen this. However, back in November of 2019, council did approve the health and safety policy 1402. You do have quite a list of attachments to this report, and it was intended to demonstrate that once we went to identifying sort of what items should be coming to council as policies, which ones are directives, and so on, and procedures, that it's taken a fair bit of time and on quite a bit of work, both on council's part and administration's, to separate these documents that used to all be under one, which was the harassment in the work environment policy 018. So just again, in order to demonstrate that everything that was in that policy is now separated out into many others in different ways, and they belong where they do now based on whether they're part of a policy, a procedure, or a directive. tonight, we are simply looking for council's support to rescind the harassment policy in 018.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Council, any questions or direction? Councilor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Sierra Howard, are there any outstanding complaints or ongoing legal matters around this policy, or is this, are we kind of free and clear within anything underneath this policy?
Yes, thank you. So thanks. So once all of the other policies and directives have been in place and they've already been approved and signed off, whether they were by council or administration, those are the ones that that have been governing us now. This is cleaning up a bit of housekeeping.
So I can just follow up, but I guess my question is, with this in place, it's been in place up until right now. Are there any complaints or challenges that have quoted this policy that are still active or outstanding?
Not that I'm aware of, and unfortunately, my staffing support is unavailable this evening, so we can get back to you on that if you want to postpone this item.
Councilor Nelson.
Yeah, for me, I think it's important if there are still outstanding, or to understand what would happen with an outstanding complaint. If there's, I'm concerned that if there's an outstanding complaint and then we get rid of that policy, it could be maybe not the best look, even though that's not the intent and we have other policies in place. I am just concerned about procedurally what that would look like.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Administration.
If I may just check with my colleague here, typically whatever legislation is in place at the time remains in perpetuity until that is resolved, but I don't know if that's a sweeping generalization and just something I recall, or if that's typically legislative practice. Correct. So if there's an outstanding item that was that applied to this policy, if this policy is rescinded, it would still apply to the outstanding item because that's the policy that was in place at the time. That is correct. So if that brings any comfort, this policy would apply if there are any outstanding ones.
Thank you, administration, for that clarity. Councilor Nelson, do you have a follow-up?
I think I'm okay for now.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council? Any other questions or direction? Is there appetite to move this forward tonight, Councilor Stashik?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I'd like to move that council rescind harassment in the work environment policy 018.
Thank you, Councilor Stashik. Council, we have a motion on the floor. I'll be in support of this. I do like Councilor Nelson's question, but administration's clarity on the purpose that we're moving forward with that being the intent, I think is great. So I appreciate that. Otherwise, it would have been a little bit murky to move forward, but I'll be supporting this. Council, any other questions or debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council rescind harassment in the work environment policy 18. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Seeing none, that'll bring us to our fourth item, council remuneration policy number CL 1103. Administration.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. So again, council has seen this item before as recently as September 21st. Your council remuneration review committee presented the results of the work that they had done to review this policy and presented those. And at the time, standing committee did discuss quite a bit about their recommendations and made a few additions and revisions, clarifications of their own. Those have been incorporated into the policy presented in your package. And the recommendation from administration this evening, based on the standing committee direction, is that council approve the council remuneration policy 1103 as presented. And then second to that is that council rescind policy 052 accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Council, any questions or direction? Councilor Hawes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually going to propose and make a motion to amend And that is to amend the schedule fee to 0 to 1 hour, to cut it in half to $37.50. Leave the 0 to 2 at 75 and so forth. I think that sometimes, personally, there are some meetings. Oh, I guess I should let her type that first. Schedule A. Yeah. I'd like to amend that Schedule A include a 0 to 1 hours at $37.50. I'll wait till it's up if I can speak to you, please. Thank you. So the reason for the amendment is I'm not only thinking about our meetings, but also our committee meetings. Sometimes our committee meetings don't take that long, the 0 to 2 hours. And I just think it's, again, fiscally responsible that if they do fall under that hour, that 75 seems, again, a little extreme for less than an hour. So that's what I'm proposing. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. Council, you have a amendment on the floor for policy 1103. Any questions? Debate. Councilor Nelson.
I'm actually going to speak or vote against it. We already reduced it to the 0 to 2 hours, and for the most part, our meetings that have been really short have been special meetings that have largely taken place because we canceled so many regular meetings. So to me, it's a governance issue, not a remuneration issue. And if we're planning our agendas properly and we go back to the schedule that's been laid out now in the procedural bylaw, and I would assume the next council will follow that. Having 4 different levels, and I think it gets to a point where it gets really confusing, and at what point do we then drop it to 30 minutes and everything else, or just have it be a prorated hourly rate? So to me, we're a week, 2 weeks before an election, and this is pretty late. I want to keep it simple. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Councilor Haas.
Yeah, and this is more coming from the committees than it is from the council meetings. I agree that the council meetings are, they're few and far between that would fall into this. I think it's still, there's quite a few committees that we're on, and I believe that, the committees that I'm on personally, they don't necessarily run more than an hour. Sometimes they're less, sometimes they are more than an hour, but I'm thinking of that reason. I'm not thinking of this for council. I'm thinking it for the committees itself. So that's where I'm coming from. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. My apologies, Councilor Race, you had your hand up earlier.
I'll stay in queue, please.
Council, any further debate? For myself, I would like to see a lower amount for that category. It wasn't my original intent to have 0 to 1. I would probably prefer a rate for under half an hour meeting. I'm trying to calculate also the prep time. So sometimes you have committees, you have a 45-minute meeting, but you have a lot of prep time. That's why I don't overly love this, although in the situations where we're going to have a 10-minute meeting, 20, it will be extremely beneficial. At this rate, the way it's proposed, I'll speak against it, but I'm open to an alternative that might be a little bit cleaner to sort of alleviate the issues for those quick meetings for flexibility without impeding the other 45-minute meetings with a lot of prep time. So for that, I'll speak against this one. Council, anything further? Councilor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Yeah, I'm going to be speaking against this proposed motion as well. In addition to the points brought up by Councilor Nelson and Mayor Michaels, prep time, travel time, those are all things that are inclusive of having to attend a meeting, especially if they're in person. There's substantially more time than just the time that's spent at the meeting. This is something that the remuneration committee brought to us, and they spoke to us in their presentation. There was the understanding and expectation that a minimum meeting time helps to cover the time lost if a counselor has to take time away from work or anything like that. So I think I'd like to honor the recommendation of the remuneration committee, and I won't be supporting this, although I would be potentially also interested in looking at something that addresses those really, really short special meetings that we sometimes have to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Council? Seeing no one, I'll call to question that council amend Schedule A of the council remuneration policy CL 1103 to include 0 to 1 hour at 37.50. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? That is defeated. 5-2. Council? Councillor Race.
Sir, thank you, sir. I did have a phone call from a citizen asking about page 117, the 4 bullets that talk about that committee, and wanted to know what committee. So, you know, just so we're all sure that that committee is the standing committee, it is not the remuneration committee for those 4 bullets. That's it, sir.
Administration.
That is correct. Our sort of legislative protocol is that when we're in standing committee, the directions from standing committee are worded such that committee, and then either direct or proceed with something. And when we are referring to any committee other than standing committee, we use the full title of that committee and then an abbreviation for it in the reports, and are quite diligent to try to catch that, especially during the motions. But that's a fair question for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that council approve council remuneration policy CL 1103 as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon.
Thank you.
Council, we have a direction on the floor. Any debate, questions? Councillor Haas.
No debate or question. I do want to speak in favor of this. Just one that matters. You know, there was a recommendation at the time, and we discussed it, but had the opportunity to speak to the public about this as well. And in regards to the honorarium for the mayor, and had a discussion, and a lot of people actually were shocked of the decrease that was asked about in this time, and felt the same, similar to council, that they really truly want to have a mayor that is accessible, and this amount makes that more likely. That it would take away from, you know, their position as a mayor, you know, being able to, or being asked to go and seek other employment. So I did have an opportunity to have those discussions with the public, and I thought that was important to share at this meeting as well. So I will be speaking in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council? Any further debate or questions? Seeing none. I'll call to question that council approve council remuneration policy number CL 1103 as presented. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further? We have one other recommended action. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I would like to move that council rescind council remuneration policy number 052.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council rescind council remuneration policy 52. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Seeing none, thank you, administration and council. That'll bring us to our 5th action item for this evening. Request to waive tax penalties 109 A, B, C, D, Reimer Drive. Administration.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Through to council. This item was before council on August 24th, where we had a landowner come before council requesting that they waive the tax penalties for this property. council was interested at the time to kind of explore that a little bit more, as there was some conditions around that presentation that we wanted a little bit more information about. So you have that in the report with you, presented by our author, Miss Donkin, who's our finance supervisor. She's on this evening if you have any questions. But as you can see, the landowner was notified, received the same 2 notifications that all of the other self-directed property program participants had received. And as such, the penalties were applied as per policy on July 1st. They have not incurred any additional penalties on the August 1st penalty date, in anticipation, of course, of this being held and dealt with. And so we're recommending that council require the owner of the properties located at 109 A, B, C, and D Reimer Drive to pay their tax penalty in the amount of $297.52 in full, and that the August 1st, 2021 tax penalty be waived should payment be received on or before October 29th, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, administration. Council. Any questions or direction? Councilor Hawes.
Thank you. So based on that information, and thank you, administration, for the report, the council requires the owners of the property located at 109 ABCD Reimer Drive to pay their tax penalty in the amount of $297.52 in full, and that the August 1st, 2021 tax penalty be waived should payment be received on or before October 29th, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Council, we have a direction on the floor. Any questions, debate? Seeing none, I will call to question. All those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? Seeing none, again, thank you, administration. That'll bring us to our 6th item, Beaver Boardwalk Committee Oversight Committee appointments. Interim CEO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. So this item is before you with the intent to, based on the terms of reference for this new oversight committee, is to appoint members to this committee. The applicants were reviewed by council in camera at the last standing committee meeting. And I have Miss Way here, who I will, if I may, pass the mic over to, just to highlight anything she would like council to consider this evening before we move to ballot voting. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Howard. Just a couple things for this evening. So we did arrange for there to be anonymous ballot voting done electronically. However, all councilors are here this evening. So before you, I have placed the ballots in front of you. You can begin voting now. Ms. Wade and myself will make our way down to collect those ballots and tally them. And then we'll go ahead and pass the names off to Ms. Rendell so that she can prepare the motion. Please note, within the report, it did speak to us not being able to find a youth representative. Also, late on Friday, we received a notification that our Indigenous persons representative must withdraw due to a new work opportunity that she's taken on, and therefore she doesn't have enough time to dedicate to this committee. However, we are prepared to re-advertise for both of those positions with the goal of having those folks appointed at the organizational committee meeting. If there are no questions, I'll make my way down and collect those ballots from you.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Council, any questions? Councilor Nelson.
I would like to postpone this matter to the organizational meeting.
And would you like to speak to that, Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, where I'm struggling a little bit is we have quite a few applicants and some that are going to be said no to, and some of them may be and are probably likely to be appointed to other committees that that council appoints people to at the organizational meeting. And I think for any council, the more diversity we can have on our committees in general, the better, and also potentially not appointing, one person to 3 committees and have their volunteer time really stretched. If this was a couple months ago and there was an opportunity to for that committee to gather and work prior to the organizational meeting, I think it would be a little bit different, but we're 14 days from the organizational meeting. I'd rather see how these applicants fit in with the broader council committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Also, the direction on the floor. I have a question for administration. I'm trying to recall with my past experience, have we deferred any committees where residents participate on at a organizational meeting in the past?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question, please? Have we deferred?
Well, I'm for my perspective, I'm quite comfortable moving forward tonight and at least getting part of it. But the question is, I don't recall us deferring in using the organizational meeting for appointments of citizens at large. It's always been for appointing councilors to their committees. That meeting, we generally do the schedule. The mayor makes recommendations for council committee members for their appointments. I just want to know if there's any precedent or if you've ever used the org meeting to deal with matters such as this.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I believe that the organizational meeting has been used to assign community members to boards and committees, but we do that in between those meetings as well when there's vacancies and whatnot. And if Ms. Rendell or Ms. Way wants to just round that question out, did I get that? That's correct. So we do use the organizational meeting for all of those types of appointments. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, and just for more clarification, in our procedural bylaw and in the organizational meeting, it clearly states make citizen appointments to boards and committees. And I actually think if we're following our bylaw, this likely, what we approved tonight likely has to come back again at the organizational meeting because the new council appoints oh no, I guess if they're on terms, it's probably okay. Yeah, to me, it just adds a level of confusion when we're not appointing everything all at the same time when we're only a couple weeks away. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Councilor McGoon?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I won't be supporting the motion that's on the floor. I think for myself, I have advocated from early on having a citizen-led committee in this area. I think that it's very important that we have those voices on hand. I'm really happy that we had a response to the call that we've put out. And in fact, I have been on the phone with citizens who have an interest in this community, trying to reassure them that their voices will be heard. I don't feel for myself that I would be respecting or honoring that conversation if I supported a motion to wait at this time. That's why I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McGoon. Councilor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will not be supporting this motion. I feel it would be delaying the process. It would be delaying a very positive step in our healing in the community in regards to the Beaver Boardwalk. People who have applied for this committee are waiting to hear. And our community is waiting for this oversight committee. They truly are, to take care, protect the vision of the boardwalk, and that's what these people will do. So I will not support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Race. For myself, even with the clarification, I do appreciate that it could be done either today or at the organizational meeting, but for me, it's just long overdue. I wish this would have happened quite a while ago. And for me, this is at least one step, and we can finalize that diversity in other positions when that comes. But this will be at least progress tonight for a committee that, again, is long overdue. Council, any further debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council postpone the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee appointment to the organizational meeting. Council, all those in favor?
Oh, sorry. I rose my hand at the wrong time.
Councilor Wong?
Me as well.
Okay, I'll begin again. Ms. Rendell, if I could just have it on the board, just so this is clear. That council postponed the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee appointments to the organizational meeting. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? That is defeated 6-1. Thank you for that. Council. Any questions or direction? And if not, administration, this is a time where we can call Ms. Way down and we could start filling in our ballots?
Yes, please.
Perfect, thank you. We'll take one moment.
Play a little Jeopardy music, maybe.
And as we wait, interim CEO Howard, will we take a moment to count the ballots, or how do we want to proceed?
We can adjourn for a couple minutes if you'd like to take a bit of a break. Ms. Way, and Ms. Rendell, how much time do you need to just adjourn to? 8 minutes, all right.
So we'll have a recess and we'll reconvene at 5:09. Hello, everyone. I'd like to reconvene this meeting at 5:11, and with that, I'll hand it off to CEO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Straight to council. So Ms. Rendell, I believe, has the results, and she will put them up on the screen for your consideration, and you can move through the motions as you please.
Thank you, administration. And with that, Councilor Nelson.
I guess I'll make the motion, but before I make the motion, the ones that don't have applicants, do we need to make a motion that they stay vacant, or do we just leave them as is?
Administration.
My first question would be, do we have any of those? We have 2 of those. So thank you for apparently the youth appointment and the Indigenous appointment. So I think they would be just left silent, and that can be considered perhaps at the organizational meeting.
Perfect, thank you. With that in mind, I will make a motion that council appoint Kevin Gedling as a Maxwell Lake area resident representative to the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee, and that council appoint Doug Lamb as a Maxwell Lake area resident representative to the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee. The council appoint Tom Marshall as a Town of Hinton resident at large representative to the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee, and that council appoint Trevor Boutillier as a Town of Hinton resident at large representative to the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee. That council appoint Beth McCallum as the educational representative to the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee. That council appoint Jan Vasbotten as the recreation and tourism representative to the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee, and that council appoint Vivian Sergiu as the environment representative to the Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee. And if I could speak to it, this is a long time coming. We did a lot of work, a lot of engagement to get to this point. And although I did make a motion that it is postponed, I don't know that it would have changed anything, and I'm excited to see this committee get to work and really, bring that community involvement into the Maxwell Lake area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, we have a direction on the floor. Councilor McGoon.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to extend my congratulations to all of the appointees. I think getting a chance to get their feet wet as soon as possible, especially understanding that there's budget considerations potentially for that area. The sooner that they can get in and start advising council on their thoughts and concerns, for that specialty area, the better. And I just can't wait to see the good work that they're going to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council? Anything further? And I will not be repeating that, as Councilor Nelson did a tremendous job. And with that, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Councilor Nelson?
I guess in email correspondence, are we expecting to have a meeting with them before the election, and when could we get that in calendars? Understanding it's like really tight to turn it over from the existing committee to the new committee.
Oh, excellent. Yes, Ms. Wei just popped your camera back on, so I will refer that to her, please.
Thank you, CAO Howard. Yeah, so through email communications, I indicated that tomorrow morning, each of these candidates will be contacted to try and coordinate a meeting time that can work for everyone. So the members of the Council Beaver Boardwalk Committee should expect an email with a few options for times tomorrow. And the sooner that I hear back, the sooner we can move forward. It is intended to have this completely closed off prior to the election.
Thank you.
Thank you, administration. Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, anything further? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to our 7th action item for this evening. The Hinton Historical Society 2021 Gap Funding Report, interim CEO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. Once again, another report, an item that has been before council before. The members of the Hinton Historical Society did present to standing committee, and was requesting some funding to some gap funding to get them to the end of the year into the next season. The report this evening, a couple of sources of funding sources that you have, the community grant portion from the Automated Traffic Enforcement Reserve, perhaps some allocation to the council donations code, as well as the council contingency fund, and those would be the options that administration is providing for you tonight, if you would like to support this gap funding request. And I have Ms. Wei here as well as the author of this report, and the staff member who has been supporting the Historical Society through this request. And the recommendation from administration is that council approve the allocation of the remaining $9,100 from the Community Grant Program, Automated Traffic Enforcement Reserve, and that $900 from the council donations to the Hinton Historical Society for the purpose of maintaining operations through 2021 through to April 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, administration. Council, any direction or questions? Councilor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I have a question. If it's the will of council to provide bridge funding to the Hinton Historical Society through whatever method or whatever amount, is that reflected or applied at all in the civic agency funding discussions for the 2022 budget?
Administration.
Yes, that will be identified there, and that I assume that their full request, when that group comes in front of the next council, as all civic agencies will, they will be asking for that full amount again, and that will be the decision of the next council to decide whether they want to allocate that, the full funding request, or a partial, the way that this council has in the past.
Can I follow up? Sorry, more specific to the actual bridge funding, and if an amount is dictated by council, if that would be reflected in the 2022 budget for council's consideration, that there was bridge funding provided as a carryover through late 2021, 2022.
Yes, the amount that, because this goes into April of 2022, that would be automatically a placeholder put in the 2022 budget as a commitment that this council has made on behalf of the next. And Ms. Wei, if there's anything else you want to add to round out that answer? Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Howard. I suppose the only addition I have is that, of course, this would be reflected in their presentation for the 2022 period, as their funding doesn't typically get to their bank until March or April. So all of that will be kind of laid out in a timeline for the next council to make consideration. And then with respect to the inventory report that was brought with respect to proposed partnerships, As council will recall, that document detailed certain key performance indicators that should additional monies be given to the museum going forward, that those KPIs will have to be met in order for funding on a go-forward basis to lengthen the time of that agreement. So all of those items will come before council as part of the presentations at the end of November.
Councilor Stashik?
If I may, Mayor Michaels, I feel like I'm not verbalizing what I'm asking very well. Because this is a transitional year, that there's going to be a new council that's going to be discussing the 2022 budget. I just want assurance that the fact that there was bridge funding provided is provided when they're considering the 2022 budget, so that when they're looking at the civic agency allocation for 2022, it's with the full knowledge that some bridge funding was provided through late 2021, early 2022.
Administration.
Thank you for that clarity, and my short answer is yes. That work?
Great.
Okay,
Yep.
yes, we will make sure that the council recognizes that bridge funding has been provided.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Stashik. Thank you, administration. Councilor Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So level of service impact or implication, if the museum does not get the funding, they will not be able to, will not be available to the public for the remainder of 2021. What does that exactly mean? Their doors are closed, their...
Administration.
Thank you, Mayor Michael. Through to Councillor Reyes. Yes, that is, again, the short version is they will be closing their doors. They do not have the funding to continue with the operations.
Councilor Reyes.
So who pays the utilities? Who keeps the building warm? Is that a concern for us? You know, it's a building sitting on our land.
Administration.
Thank you, Mayor Michael. Through to Councillor Reyes. My assumption with the fact that they need bridge funding is to maintain the programs and services that they've been provided, and the staffing and the costs related to that. The requirement to keep their building heated during the winter, and whatever lights on that need to be, and that type of thing. And I'm sorry, I can't remember if they spoke to that when they came to council last time, but the assumption is that they have the money to keep the building as a safe asset, but it's the programs and services that would no longer be available, and the facility would not be open to the public.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Reyes, and thank you, administration. Council, any other questions or direction? Councilor Nelson.
I'd like to move that council approve the allocation of the remaining 9,100 from the Community Grant Program ATE Reserve and 900 from the council donations to the Hinton Historical Society for the purpose of maintaining operations from 2021 through to April 22. If I can speak to it, it's probably going to be some difficult decisions and discussions during budget, especially as there's a motion on the table that brings their funding down to only 55,000 for 2022. Hopefully between now and then, whatever has to happen, and we see this, partnership report come back, we can figure out what support is necessary to keep this asset moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, we have a direction on the floor. Councilor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I'll be supporting the proposed motion. I don't want to see the programs and services that the museum offers be interrupted in the interim. I do look forward to receiving some additional information, or new council receiving additional information regarding a sustainability plan or recovery plan, so that the long-term future of the museum can be determined one way or another. But in the meantime, happy to provide bridge funding to make sure that they can keep their doors open until a final determination can be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stashik. Council, any further debate or questions? Seeing none, I call the question that council approve the allocation of the remaining 9,100 from the Community Grant Program ATE Reserve and 900 from the council donation to the Hinton Historical Society for the purpose of maintaining operations from 2021 through to April of 2022. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? Seeing none, again, thank you, administration and council. That'll bring us to our 8th item, Evergreens Foundation Strategic Plan Support Letter. CEO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Through to council. The Standing Committee on September 14th, council received a presentation from the Evergreens Foundation, and they highlighted their capital plan and the upcoming initiatives that they have in Yellowhead County, specifically in Wildwood, and the MD of Greenview at Victor Lake. The direction at that time was to request administration to bring back a letter of support for these items to the meeting this evening. So we've kept our report quite short, doesn't have all the usual analysis and matrix and charts and all that. Basically, the letter that we have drafted for you is attached, and the recommendation this evening is that you direct administration to issue the Evergreens Foundation Strategic Plan letter of support on behalf of council. Thank you.
Thank you, administration. Council, Councilor Stasher.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I'd like to move the council direct administration to issue the Evergreens Foundation Strategic Plan Letter of Support on behalf of council. If I could speak to it quickly. I think the long-term care facilities, or sorry, the assisted living facilities that Evergreens has built in Edson and Hinton are a testament to the great work that they do. I think it's pretty well known that seniors assisted living facilities are becoming in higher and higher demand. So I think that council issuing a letter of support to Evergreens for these 2 additional projects that they want to undertake is probably the least that we can do, and I fully support sending a letter of support on behalf of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stasher. Council, we have a direction on the floor. Councilor Magoon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to support this. One of the things I think it's important to note coming out of our support and our consideration of Truth and Reconciliation Day is that one of these overall designs, one of the overarching designs included, I think, some really well thought out cultural considerations for First Nations and Aboriginal residents. And that's something that's long been missing from these sorts of facilities. So when we can add that extra component as the Evergreens is designing, it makes me feel better about supporting that project. Not that I wouldn't anyway. I think it just goes that one step extra to show that they're really working with the members and citizens of all their partner communities to make sure that, you know, our senior citizens' needs are met when it comes to assisted living. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council, any further comments, questions, debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Council direct administration to issue the Evergreens Foundation Strategic Plan Letter of Support on behalf of council. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? Seeing none, again, thank you, administration and council. That'll bring us to our 9th item, tax penalty bylaw 1164, interim CEO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Through to council. Feeling a bit redundant here, saying you've seen this before, but you have lots of work done in the last couple of months by council to get to this point and get a bow put on a few of these things. This is the tax penalty bylaw 1164. It was in front of council back on September 21st. The only changes at that time that committee wanted to see is suggesting that the tax rate for July 1st, or sorry, the penalty rate for July 1st be 5% and August 1st be 10%, and that it come back for all 3 readings, the intent tonight. So you have the report in front of you. There are a couple of items just to understand the implications of the change of those penalty percentages. From the original 9% on July 1st and 6% on August 1st. And if the committee has an appetite for that, they can proceed through the bylaw readings for first, second unanimous consent and third reading this evening. And of course, a reminder that you can amend the bylaw after your first reading or second reading for that matter. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, administration, council. Would you like to get first reading on the floor? Councilor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move that council give tax penalty bylaw number 1164 first reading.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Council? Seeing no one, I'll call to question. The council give tax penalty bylaw 1164 first reading. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council? Councilor Race?
Thank you, sir. I would like to move that council give tax penalty bylaw number 1164 second reading. And if I may speak to that, I am extremely happy about moving to 5% tax penalty in July and 10% in August. That'll make a lot of people very happy. I'm very happy about the TIP program, where people can pay their taxes from January to December and not suffer a penalty. And for a lot of people, that's big, it's a big help. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Council, we have second reading on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for question. The council give tax penalty bylaw 1164 second reading. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, is there appetite for unanimous consent or any further questions? Councilor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I'd like to move the council give tax penalty bylaw number 1164 unanimous consent for third reading.
Thank you, Councilor Stashik. Council, any questions or debates? Seeing none, I'll call the question. The council give tax penalty bylaw 1164 unanimous consent for third reading. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, Councilor Hawes.
I'd like to give the council give tax penalty bylaw number 1164 third reading this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Council. For myself, I think this is a step in the right direction. I know we could look at amending or changing other things in the implications, but to me, this represents, I think, what the community wants. Everyone I talk to understands the premise of having a lower penalty at first, and we understand, especially during the summertime, there are anomalies that happen, and people get the big penalty first is disheartening, and we don't want, and we've been at council, and I think previous councils don't want to one-off many of these. It makes it challenging. So to reduce the first fee, I think, gives an opportunity for that dwelling to get their taxes corrected, and if not, we make up the other amount on the 31 days later. So to me, I think it's a fair approach, and it really represents what I believe will save us from some heartache in the future. Council, anything further before I call the question? Seeing none, I'll call the question. The council gives tax penalty bylaw 1164 third reading. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? Seeing none, against, thank you, administration and council. That'll bring us to our 10th item, and for that, I'll hand it off to CAO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Through to council. This is an item that we're bringing forward from the council action pending list. It was first discussed on July 6th of this year. So what administration has done is we've attached the report that came on July 6th and was the topic of conversation that prompted the motion that was then postponed. So you can see the report that's attached just to provide context, to jog your memory about where it was and what it came from. And that was around the funding from the canceled locker replacement project at the recreation center. And so that item was dealt with, that there was a motion on the floor to transfer that $100,000 from that project from the operational reserve, project reserve to the recreation construction reserve. And then that motion was further postponed until after the audit, which of course that has been done now. So that's, you can bring that motion forward. A couple of things, if I may suggest, before you move to discussion on this item, is the operational project reserve is the proper name of that is the one-time operating reserve. And the other second part for your consideration is if the intent of council is to use the savings from the permanent cancellation of that project to put into the recreation construction reserve, that $100,000 should be actually transferred from the facilities components reserve instead of the one-time operating reserve, because that one-time operating reserve basically is a placehold for all projects that are already scheduled and approved. And it's almost kind of like a clearing account per se. It doesn't have a regular transfer put in there just for the sake of savings. And so the savings will actually be seen in the facilities and components reserve. And then a note on that while there is $700,000 balance in there at the end of December 2020, that reserve, as you can imagine, for all facilities and all components of facilities, needs a bit more than $700,000. So it's underfunded right now, but that would be the appropriate place to take that from if you wanted to pursue this. And we also did provide one other attachment just to give you a sense of the balance on the restricted reserves at the end of December 2020. And I think that's it. So I can pass it back to you for your.
Thank you, CEO Howard. Councilor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I have a question. It's regarding in brackets on the recommended action, it says a new, in brackets, FGTF eligible project. I'd just like to get an idea, if I could, on what types of capital projects might be FGTF eligible and maybe what might not be.
Right, okay, so I apologize, I don't have my corporate services or finance support around the table, but I may, if I can call upon Mr. Rousseau, he probably has the number of projects and be the most familiar with what kinds of projects are eligible, and I can just, if you give me a few minutes, we can move on and I can come back to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stashik. Councilor Nelson.
Well, I guess to start, I'd like to amend the motion to reflect facilities and components reserve. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
If I may, Councillor Nelson, what you're wanting to amend your original motion made on July 6th to.
Well, I think that's the motion that's now on the floor.
Right, so we'll
so
bring that motion up and then we can make amendments to that. Okay. Give us one moment to get that typed in and then we will bring it up on the screen.
Counselor, I'm sorry, are we good administration? Or Counselor Nelson?
Yeah, if I could speak to it. Originally, we were, the motion was to take it from the pool locker replacement to the reserve. Administration asked that it's the operational, so now we're just updating it to what administration needs it to be administratively. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Nelson. Council, we have an amendment on the floor. Any questions or debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council amend the original motion by replacing operational project reserve with facilities and components reserve. Council, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Council. Councilor Nelson.
Yeah, I'll speak to the original motion. The concept during budget was that we didn't see the value in replacing the lockers in a facility that we're looking to do something with. And then it was just sensible for council to move that from the lockers into the reserves so that it's there for to support the construction. And we've gone through a couple processes to get to this point, but really simply it's just taking it from a construction in 2021 to a future construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, if I can ask administration to input the original motion on the screen. Any questions or debates? Councilor Lagoon?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think barring any other debate or information from my fellow council members, I'm happy to support the motion. I think the more funds that we're putting away in terms of planning for this project over the long term, the better. And I think this is money well spent in the long run. Thank you.
And the administration, for clarity, would be Councilor Nelson's direction that council direct administration to transfer the 100,000. Just want to clarify that. Administration.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. If I may, just while we're waiting, Ms. Weber, I'm going to take a chance here, maybe put you on the spot to see if you are aware of what kinds of projects that would be eligible for the federal gas tax fund grant. Again, I'm thinking most of them are typically come from the infrastructure development kind of area. Thank you, Ms. Weber. Thanks.
Thank you, Interim CAO Howard, through to council. I am unable to answer that question, actually. Yes, I'm unable to answer that question to help you out, unfortunately.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks. And if I may, through to Councillor Ostashik, I'm unable to get that information for you this evening, but I can send that through to council tomorrow or as soon as possible when I get that information. And
Councilor Nelson, is that good?
No, that's like the motion should read direct administration to transfer $100,000 from the facilities and components reserve to the recreation center construction reserve.
Recreation Center Construction Reserve, correct? Thank you, administration. Council, any further debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council direct administration to transfer $100,000 from the facilities and component reserve to the recreational center construction reserve. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further? And the second one would be Councilor Magoon's motion. Administration?
That should make that one moot.
So it would be moot. Do we have to do anything? Because these motions were deferred. So I just want to make sure that there's anything legislatively or.
No, I think now that we've demonstrated that it was in your agenda today, we can mark that one complete and we've dealt with the original one. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Council, anything further for the 10th action item? Acting CEO or interim CEO Howard?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Oops, if I can just dump the screen there. Ms. Rendell, I believe I saw Mr. Rousseau join us. It's our one last chance to see if he's aware. Thank you, Mr. Rousseau. The question from Councillor Ostashuk is on this item was what kinds of projects are eligible for the federal gas tax fund grant? And I thought you may be able to answer that in whole or in part, and if not, that's fine.
Thank you, CEO Howard, through to the chair, to Councillor Stashik. These could be varied projects. I mean, they could go from SCADA systems, which would mean software. This could be anything from like a decommissioning, like we would be doing with the Scout Wall, just to give you a practical example. It could be a recreation center, any mechanical repairs and replacements. So that is about the extent. I wouldn't say that's the full extent. I haven't had a chance to look at it fully, but that's the scope of projects that I can recall that's under gas tax funding right now.
Thank you, administration. Council, anything further before we move to the 11th action item? Seeing none, again, thank you, administration and council. The 11th item, CEO Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. This item was brought forward as the notice of motion that was provided by Councillor Race on September 7th, and this is the next available regular meeting for that to be brought forward as per the protocol. And so I could pass that back to council as directly to actually Councillor Race to speak to her notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you, administration. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, we're coming to the end of our term, and to me, this is a really big deal, naming something after Diane Erickson. Extremely big deal. So in giving this a lot of thought, I would like this to come back to the next council. I truly would. For now, I would like to make the following motion. To retain Diane Erickson's name on the names reserve list for future consideration. And what I had initially asked for was that small park just to the south of the Scout Hall. And then I had actually asked for the Scout Hall. I go, this woman was big. She was huge in our community. So we've got to give her a piece of land that really represents how huge she was. Then I find out that the land joining the Scout Hall, my God, it went down past Emerson. Just, you know, a lot of considerations that I was not aware of. So I think this project needs to come back to next council, really needs to be looked at and understood. Service levels could be affected. So if there are service levels that need to be put to this area, what do we take away from another area? And so that was all a big concern to me. So there you go.
I have a point of clarification for administration. Since it's a notice of motion, is the motion automatically on the floor? And then we have to withdraw that motion and then Council Race could, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you, administration. So, Council Race, I'll give it back, give you the floor. Would you like to withdraw the notice of motion that you brought forward on the 7th?
I certainly would, with council's permission, I would like to withdraw.
Thank you, Council Race. Council, we have a ask to withdraw the notice of motion. Any objections? Seeing none, that motion is withdrawn. And Council Race, if you could put forward your second direction or the direction that you spoke to earlier.
Okay, I would like to move the council direct administration to proceed with naming, no, that is not right. That council direct administration to retain Diane Erickson's name on the names reserve list for future consideration. And that's where I'd like to leave it right now.
Thank you, Council Race. Council. Any debate, questions? Councilor Stashik.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies. I wasn't at the September 7th meeting to be a part of the initial discussion around this. So I'm just, I guess the question is, there's a naming policy that the town has and the process for submitting names to that. Has Diane Erickson's name been formally submitted for the terms of the naming policy?
Administration.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Through to Councillor Stashik. Yes, it has. She's been on that list for a few years now, and we have her full background and history. And so we just haven't had any opportunity to name streets, roads, parks since that time that would be appropriate. So this would maintain her on that list for future consideration, and also allow the family to continue to pursue perhaps something that was a little bit more linear with the process instead of general parks zoned lands, but an actual park. Thank you.
Can I follow up? So I'm just wondering then, is this motion necessary then? Is there anything that would cause her name to be removed from the naming list?
Thank you. No, her name will not be removed from the list. This is not necessary, but it does provide a record for a resolve to the notice of motion that was given, instead of just sort of rescinding it, and kind of keeps that sort of alive and well and brings it up to the forefront again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, administration. Thank you, Councilor Stashik. I'll be in support of this motion for that reason. I have no issue, confirming this to the public that this is on the radar. And I think the next council will have an opportunity to look at this policy in general, because I struggle with recommendations that come from the public and how their action and how they come to council. And it's perhaps an opportunity to streamline or put protocols in place for people who have these requests to automatically, under a certain format, come to council for a decision and not sort of kind of wait there, because sometimes there's a long list of people who are on that list, and it makes it sometimes problematic to pick one over the other to bring forward to council. So, but with that being said, I will support this motion. Councilor House.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I too, I think this is, I will be supporting it, but to comment on, maybe for the next council to consider, I think it is important that we identify individuals in our community, and, maybe even looking at a committee of council, that meets once a year or something to review who is submitted, and then consider where might a good spot be. And I think, that would be a work with the administration, with council, and that committee. So I think that I think we don't do it enough in our community, and I think we need to take more active role in doing that. So I think for the next council, that's something to consider. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. I want to add one more point, I guess, for anybody who's watching or when they watch. Councilor Haas brings up a good point. historically, and I've done it a few times in my experience, and I think Councilor Magoon, that when there's a street name that is needed, it's automatically comes. And when administration has something, but there's also a secondary list, meaning if you want to appoint somebody, but you don't want to wait until something comes up, you could do so. An example would be the football field that we had discussed. That wouldn't come up. So I really like that idea of having an extra set of eyes for the ones when we don't currently have something to name, to look at alternative or other things in addition to street signs and those that must come to council when one is created. So very good point. I wanted to elaborate to those who are watching the difference between the two streams that would come to council. Council, any further discussion or debate? Councilor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing I want to add. I didn't realize all the considerations, all the things that you need to think of, the impacts down the road. If you have a street and you decide you don't, like it called Gary Street, and now we want to call it Diane Erickson Street, how many people are impacted by that street change? How many people have to go to the post office, get a change of address, blah, blah, blah. So everything we do, we really truly have to look at the ramifications down the road by making that one initial decision. So this, I'm glad I started down this road with, trying to name a park after Diane Erickson, because what I learned in the process was just unreal. So I'm very grateful, and just want to thank, is Mindy still here? Thank her so much, and Winston and everybody, because it was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Race. Council, anything further? Or call for question? Seeing none. Call for question that council direct administration to retain Diane Erickson's name on the named reserve list for future consideration. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? And seeing none, thank you again, Council and admin. That'll bring us to our discussion items, October 12th, 2021 standing committee meeting. I will quickly go to acting or interim CEO Howard if she has any comments regarding this.
Nothing particular, just wanted to provide council with the opportunity to discuss. That is your last and final meeting of this term. It's a standing meeting at this point. You can have a couple options. You can leave it as a standing committee item or meeting. You can turn it into a regular meeting, or you can cancel it altogether for your discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. One point, interim CEO Howard and I had a quick conversation before the meeting, and this is new information, but our in-camera item may have a content that might make us need a potential meeting. So I would be in preference if the CAO is okay with that, to table this until we have that discussion. It could be a clear, more simpler conversation if it's needed for that item. Any comments on that, interim CEO Howard?
Yes, you can table this to the end of your meeting after you come out of your closed session to make a decision on this.
Councilor Nelson?
I'll make the motion to table it till the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously to table. That'll bring us to our information items. Provincial COVID-19 restrictions, town facilities update. Oh, sorry, Councilor Haas.
I'd like to call up point of privilege, please.
So a 7-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 6:05.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. So the first information item in your package is a report from Mr. Von Claver and myself, just to provide council and the community with some provincial COVID-19 restrictions on our town facilities, an update. And so as everyone will recall, it seems longer ago, but it's only been since September 16th. There were restrictions put in place, a state of public health emergency, where there were some immediate restrictions put in place, followed by some additional restrictions and options on the Monday of September 20th. So since that time, as has been for the last year and a half, it takes a little while for administration and communities and all businesses across the province to try to figure out how those new restrictions apply to them and all the nuances of the, what about this, what about this? So we've been working through that. The immediate impact on the Thursday, the 16th, was a fairly easy transition for us. It was back into some protocols that we'd used before and some practices, so that was an easier shift. The unique thing that came up available on Monday, the 20th, was a new program, which is the Restrictions Exemptions program, which there are a list of facility operators that can opt into this program. And basically what that does is it allows them to not have to reduce their capacity. So I would use the pool, for example. Our capacity is 234. Under the normal restrictions that came out for September 20th, we would have to go to 1/3 capacity, as well as some other restrictions on top of that. But if we opt into the program, we can stay open to our full capacity for our rec centers and our other buildings, including council chambers, for example. So we chose to opt into the program. What that required is that we have, there's a proof of either a proof of vaccination, a proof of negative test within 72 hours, or a medical exemption of vaccination eligibility, and a verification of ID for adults, but not the youth. And so all of that kind of is highlighted in the report. We've just provided a little bit of information of how that impacts some of the other leaseholders and renters in our building, being the Hinton Children's Learning Center, the concession, for example, the pro shop. So we do have some spaces within spaces and how that impacts them. On page 161 of your agenda, it outlines what the rec center would look like if we did not opt into the program. And you can see that there's a significant impact on the programs and services that we would be able to provide. And so we are in the business of recreation and getting people out and about, mentally healthy, physically healthy, and all of those kinds of things, especially with all of our user groups wanting to get back to their programming. So that page provides you what that would look like without opting into the program. Throughout the rest of the report, we just talk about some of the other spaces that people may be curious about, as well as yourselves, and what that would look like opting in the program and opting out of the program. And so yes, we just wanted to bring that to your attention. It's very complex, and I can assure you that things constantly keep moving. We're trying to find different places on the provincial website to match information that says on this link versus that link, as well as some of the softer announcements that we receive even through Dr. Hinshaw, through her tweets, for example, but that we can't really find any updates on the actual provincial website. So we're just trying to balance all of those. I will also take this time to speak briefly to the closure of the Dr. Duncan Murray Recreation Center on Thursday. As you know, the notices went out about that. We were unable to maintain the safety for the staff and the patrons, and so that facility was closed until further notice. What we have done in the meantime is we have secured the security services contract to provide support for us to remain in the opted into the program so that we can keep our facility fully open. And so that proof screening will now be done by the security company until further notice. And there is I wanted to bring to your attention as well that there has been a budget implication to that. We have signed a 1-month contract for now. It does give us flexibility to extend that contract. It's a contract that administration has entered into to provide the services. So we've done that within our latitude to do so. We can accommodate that for the first week of the 1-month contract, and then without it significantly impacting other programs and services. And so we can extend this contract indefinitely as needed, and we can also sort of back it off a bit. So if we need less or during different hours, that kind of thing. So it can be extended, and it can also be reduced over time. And so and I apologize for the last minute notice on this, but we are, because there is a budget impact, we are just requesting at this time that council consider funding the security services contract at the Dr. Duncan Murray Recreation Center up to $36,000 between now and the end of 2021. We may use all or none of that, depending on what's needed at the discretion of administration, as it's our responsibility to keep, again, the staff and the public safe. And we're suggesting, I think the option for council at this time is that be funded from the emergency, sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Emergency, help me out, Hans.
Emergency response reserve.
The emergency response reserve. I just didn't have that in front of me at the moment, so my computer timed out on me. So again, we can certainly bring this to you in 1 month increments. The difficulty with that is, of course, our reports are done up. We start working on them a couple of weeks before the report date. So with the contract that was put in place on Monday, effective today, a month from now, we would be coming back, starting that report in 2 months, or sorry, 2 weeks. And so it's a bit onerous, but we can certainly do it in those kind of increments. But I'm asking at this time for a bit of a longer support with the conditions around it, that it's up to that amount, that it's of course based on as needed. And administration would bring a report monthly to council, just as an information item such as this, to report on the security services that are happening at the recreation center and the funding status on that, as our commitment to keep you informed on those funds and the effectiveness of that program. So I have Mr. Von Klaveren here is to support any questions you might have. It primarily is, again, focused around the recreation center, but this does apply to all of our town buildings where we deliver town programs and services. All of the other buildings really aren't impacted by the restrictions right now because the spaces are not open to the public. The exceptions are, of course, the rec center and the government center when it comes to the committee room and the council chambers, which is why this evening we are in council chambers and we are complying to the restrictions exemption program. So I will pass that back. If you have any questions, we can take them now.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Councilor Goon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion. Mr. Rendell, I don't know if you have access to this suggested motion, so I can read it out slowly. Here, I'll read it through. That council approve up to $36,000. Sure. Up to $36,000 for contracted security services for the remainder of 2021 to implement the COVID-19 restrictions exemption program at the recreation center on an as needed basis to be funded from the emergency response reserve and that administration provide an information report to council once per month, summarizing service levels, and funding status of security services required to implement the COVID-19 restrictions exemption program at the rec center. Mr. Mayor, if I can speak to that, please. I very much appreciate the opportunity to bring this forward, although this is certainly an area where I wish I didn't have to. I was upset enough hearing about what had happened secondhand. And I had the opportunity, being a teacher, to speak to some of my students who work at the rec center and were subjected to some pretty awful behavior. And I will tell you that I try not to lose my cool and get upset when I hear certain things, but it was very hard not to. You know, people are talking a lot about their rights, and I think we should have a forum where we can discuss respectfully with each other where we see differences and, you know, where we don't see things eye to eye. That's important. That's part of democracy. What is not acceptable is subjecting young people, students, staff to an unsafe work environment. And that is exactly the kind of behavior that some people chose to engage in. That's unfortunate. I think they represent a minority within our town. What we have to encourage people to do in the meantime is to engage in a respectful dialogue. I think that's how these problems get solved and sorted out. But what I've heard from the community in the meantime is they've asked for very strong leadership from council on this, and I'm very happy to provide it, and I would ask for council support. I think in this case, strong leadership looks like ensuring our staff have the resources necessary to ensure their safety while this program is being implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. Council, we have a motion on the floor. I have Councilor Nelson, Hans, and Ostashik.
Just based on the comments from our CAO and that the intent of the security services would be for the recreation center and other buildings, does this motion as it stands allow for it to be used in places like the government center? Because it is specific to the recreation center on the motion itself.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Through to Councillor Nelson. Yes, right now, majority and exclusively, it is at the recreation center. The only other space is again this space. This evening, we've used support from our Peace Officer 2 level, and we think that is suffice for now. We do have an option, of course, within the contract to explore if there's additional services needed at other buildings. But right now, this is specifically around the rec center, and we believe that we can support access to this building and these meetings through other means at this time.
Can I follow up, Mr. Mayor? I guess where the benefit of making a motion that takes us to the end of 2021 is so that we don't need to come back urgently if something changes. And you know, these programs are being implemented by the provincial government, and they aren't necessarily overly predictable. So I just wonder if removing the rec center and just using government buildings might provide administration the flexibility to do what they need to respond to the provincial government as they make their changes.
Administration.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Through to Council Nelson. Absolutely, administration would support that amendment. If I may also just call on Mr. Van Claveren, as he was the one who negotiated and understands the nuances of the contract. Mr. Van Claveren, does the current contract allow us to extend perhaps into some support for this space, the council chambers, for example, or is it specifically negotiated for just rec center?
Thank you, Interim CEO. Of course, and through to Council. So it is, of course, first geared towards the rec center, but it has the flexibility to negotiate and extend it to basically more support at the recreation center itself, or even other buildings if we choose to do so. Yeah.
Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, if I could just request maybe a friendly amendment that just says recreation center and other municipal buildings in the two places it says it, and then I think it achieves what we're trying to accomplish tonight. If that's not okay to be friendly, I can make it as a formal amendment as well.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Councilor McGinn?
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the question and the clarification on the part of Councilor Nelson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Council, well, we have an amended motion that was accepted. I'll just wait for Ms. Mendel to put that up. But in the meantime, I'll go to Councilor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too, as Councilor Magoon mentioned, I'm not happy to support this, but I am going to support it. This is $36,000 coming that could have went to other things. From what I understand, this is the money that we did earmark from our recreation reserve, and we're taking that money from there. Is that correct to administration?
Administration?
Yes, this reserve was originally created with the intent to support any requirements that might come up through the COVID pandemic situation that's up till now we have not needed to make use of, and so now that would be the source of the funds. Thank you.
If I may then. So understanding that administration worked very hard, council, to keep that fund safe from it over the months of COVID. Now a few have now cost this community $36,000 in their actions. And I find that appalling. Not only did they, also Councilor Magoon mentioned the staff, but also those children that were there playing games, doing things, exposed to that behavior. That is not what responsible people do in our community. If they have something to say to council, to the provincial government, say it. But to take it to action like that, and from what I heard, talking to also people who work there, this was an orchestrated action that was fully intended to show force, if I may use that word, in that facility. And I'm absolutely just mortified that community members would do that to the young people of our community and to cost the taxpayers of our community that much. So I do support this. I want to support staff and support also keeping that rec center open. But I really hope that the people that did this, that were part of it, really think about what they've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Councilor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Yeah, I will be supporting the proposed motion. I'm extremely disappointed that it's come to this, as other councilors have said, that a small group of individuals have been able to cause such an effect in the community that we've had to take this action as a council and administration to make sure that the users of the rec center and the staff that work there are safe. But if that's what it comes down to be able to keep the rec center open with the ability to provide services to as many people as possible, then that's what it's, then that it is what it is, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stashik. Council? Councilor Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too support this. I think the people who did this don't care. They don't care that we're going to spend $36,000 tonight where that money could have went elsewhere. They don't care. Hopefully some are remorseful. Like Councillor Hawes says, I feel so bad for the kids. The kids seeing adults act like this, hey? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Reese. I'll be in support of this motion. I don't have a lot to add from what my fellow councilors have put forward. It's disappointing that these actions took place. And then there's another level, and I've said it before, and I think other councilors spoke to it. The provincial government has to do a better job when it comes to these restrictions. And this isn't an excuse for these actions. They're two separate things, but just the example of bringing forward a policy that said that children under 18 would be vaccinated to play, getting many parents bothered, and then changing 3 days later. There's a long list of these types of shifting nonstop by the provincial government that is unfortunate, that then leads to what is behavior that shouldn't be condoned, and it's difficult to see that in our community. But it's a reality that we know these things will happen, and they will continue to happen if perpetuated, or if not taken more seriously on bringing forward policies that will help. So again, not condoning it, but there are many levels of issues that municipalities such as Hinton and throughout Alberta are facing. That it's unfortunate that we have to spend $36,000. Staff and children have to experience this. Things that could alter, their upbringing, things that we never saw growing up. So it's overall so unfortunate. Councilor Magoon.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to sort of emphasize one point. Individual people who are upset with rules and regulations, they absolutely have a right to have their voices heard. But again, after hearing the stories of the people who were there, what they do not have the right to do is make others in our community feel unsafe and threaten them. And there is no doubt in my mind, for any citizens at home who are worried about the town spending $36,000, there is no doubt in my mind that that test has been met by the people that I've spoken to, where they felt unsafe and they felt threatened in that position. And again, just to, a single example, no one has the right to roll into the rec center and make a 17-year-old person feel unsafe about the work environment they're in. No one has that right. You have the responsibility to conduct yourself as an adult and as a respectful human being. And I can't stop at anything less. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Councilor Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think everyone's dealt enough with the situation that led to the need for this motion, but I again wanted to emphasize my gratitude to administration for, once again in the time of COVID, dealing with a situation that, a year and a half ago we would not have been, been able to anticipate at all. So again, congratulations to them for responding to an uncertain situation in an unusual time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Waugh. Councilor Nelson.
Yeah, I'm not going to add much, but the one thing that I would add is when it comes time to the organizational meeting, I think this is, again, one of those reasons that it's really good to have the full allotment of council meetings per month. From when the decision was made by the provincial government to when things took place in the rec center, there was no council meeting in between then at which we'd be making the decision. So in some ways, if we would have had a council meeting, we might have been able to provide that outlet to citizens. And then seeing us as the decision makers, administration absolutely did the right thing, and implementing the REP program was the right thing. But sometimes when it's council that makes that decision and that motion, then we can be the ones that are challenged by the public, and it could have done something to avoid that. So just as we're figuring out how many meetings we need a month, I think things like this also draw that into focus as well. So I'll obviously be in support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, anything further before I call this to question? Administration.
Did the motion get changed to be, and Mr. the building, sorry, it's not instead of, but in addition to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, administration, for that. Councilor Magoon, you're okay with that change?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council, anything further? Due to the length, I won't repeat this one, so if you can please have a look. Council, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? Interim CEO Howard, any further directions or comments from administration?
Nothing from administration, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So seeing none, that'll bring us to our second information item, council information packages number 1 for October 5th, 2021. Council, any questions or direction? Councilor Haas.
Before I make the motion, I just want to bring attention to the public. There's a letter in here to our Hinton Fire Department from the city of Kamloops, and I just want to thank Chief Beautrap, for helping out, sending our members over to Kamloops and helping with personnel and equipment assisting with some wildfires that are out there. So I just want to, acknowledge that and thank again the city of Kamloops too for their letter. So on that, I'd like to make a motion to accept information package number 1.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a direction on the floor. Any questions or debate? Seeing none, I call to question. Can we skip that on the screen? To accept the council information packages number 1 for October 5th, 2021 as for information. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. That'll bring us to a reporting for this evening. Council, I'll start on my right with Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple of things. Had my last committee meeting with the library. Couple things that came from there. Happy to say that our library now owns a 3D printer. That was donated by Asante Financial Management along with Walmart. We're just waiting on one additional piece that have to go some kind of hood over top of it. But that will be coming, to use of there. And we really talked about, the need to promote it. Apparently, not sure much about 3D printers, but apparently it's quite handy to do parts of things that you can't find. And in this day of COVID, it takes a long time to get some parts, so you can actually just go and do it on the 3D printer, I guess. And so very exciting. It's been a long wait. Another thing that came forward, the library is going to participate in a service review. We've allotted no more than it was $8,000. The budget looked about $5,000. We want to get a little wiggle room there for travel time. But an individual is going to come in, do a service review of the library and the staff, and give an overview of what we're doing and maybe things that we can improve upon, add to, because one has really never been done in the library before. So we're excited to see that happen. Myself also, in light of naming things, we've also tried to get some sponsorship to rename the tech room. Tech room has been the tech room a long time. Tech, is not as much part of our community as it once was. So my recommendation was actually a gentleman who spent a lot of time at the rec center, Mr. Tom Peterson. He spent a lot of time there sharing his knowledge of history with anyone that would, come and listen. So hopefully in the next committee, it's on the books and they're going to be looking at renaming that. So that was good to hear. One other thing I had, since we haven't met since, but Councillor Race was unable and asked me to join the ASH meeting. There was a special meeting by ASH, and it was specifically to discuss the restriction exemption program. And it was unanimous that the path will be following the restriction exemption program. It was the only option really to keep the doors open and also the user groups to continue to use it. 1/3 would have hindered a lot of groups from even joining. So that'll be in place, and then each user group, each partner is responsible for the restriction exemption program. So yeah, that'll be started. Policies have already been written up, and hopefully this might also, bring in some of those user groups sooner than what they thought before, because now of the restriction exemption program. So that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some news from Community Futures. We got together for what was probably the last time for a regular meeting last week. They are looking for a business analyst, looking to hire somebody. They're also going to be looking to help any small businesses that are still struggling to fully understand some of the pandemic restrictions. They always welcome people contacting them to learn a little bit more. Last but not least, there's the Smart Starts program, which is a little bit of a mentorship program for entrepreneurs. has been pushed to February. They're just trying to be a little bit more cautious with the increase in COVID over the last month. They're just trying to be as prudent as possible to ensure safety for these programming options. So I believe that is, oh, actually, one last thing that I wanted to point out. We approved the strategic plan for the next couple of years. And the 4 pillars of that plan is organizational sustainability, regional collaboration, community economic development, and entrepreneurial services. So just wanted to bring that forward. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll have Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had on September the 22nd an RCMP committee meeting with, of course, lots of input from other various services. So highlighting some of those, Sergeant Gursky indicated that traffic enforcement is up 250% from last year. However, a large portion of that is about promoting and ensuring safe driver behavior. So that's excellent. We are through the peak season. In terms of reducing thefts, that was probably the area that I wasn't so enthused by some of the information, because there's a lot of frustration on behalf of our members in terms of how they feel like there's a bit of a revolving door between the RCMP services and the legal system, in that it takes about 5 to 6 times before some of these habitual offenders get remanded into custody. However, again, trying to counter that, there's been 88 condition checks done by our members. They've executed 3 search warrants, executed a successful drug trafficking charge on 4 individuals in July, and also executed a successful search warrant on Mountain Street. They've also wanted to make sure that they're maintaining their positive interactions in the community. They plan to do a town hall after municipal elections sometime in the last half of October. And to date, they've done over 31 different community events where they've had a presence. In terms of personnel and vacancies, we have 3 vacancies. 22 is when we're at full strength. We do have a staff sergeant that has been named and is waiting on a transfer, so that's great news. And that's Staff Sergeant Shiloh Fragameni, and she is out of Grand Prairie. And we have 2 other members coming in, but again, we're waiting on the RCMP. How they have to sell their houses, get personal affairs in order, that sort of thing. Family violence, good news, is down 33%. However, mental health calls are up. They're still up. In terms of local bylaw, we do have one of our local bylaw officers who's resigned. However, it's to sort of pursue his career aspirations. So Nick Pratt, congratulations, good job. He's going to be seeking out a career in conservation, police, and enforcement work. So that's great for Nick. So we have 1 CPO on right now. They are attending work Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. They're focused on school safety right now and bylaw issues. However, the after-hours phone will still be monitored by staff. And I think really there's some changes that are coming down the pipeline to the CPO program. And AT has been busy. 162 tickets were issued in July, 80% on Highway 16. 19% of those were to residents of Hinton, 81% to non-residents. And we've been informed that the recovery on those tickets is fairly low because of the amount of them that are from out of town. And that's about it. Next meeting is slated for December the 15th. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I truly wished I had as much to report, but I don't. However, I want to thank Councillor Hawes for attending my ASH meeting. And I do want to take this opportunity, because I'm not going to get it again. This will be the last time I sit with this council at a regular council meeting. It's not going to happen again. Maybe the last time I sit with a bunch of you people, or any of you people. I've got to say, this is the hardest job I ever had, the loneliest job I ever had. I had more bosses, thousands of bosses. I wouldn't have traded it for a minute. So however that election goes, whether I'm in or out, it has been just wonderful. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Race. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Just to build off of Community Futures, one of the things that was actually really special is we had a long time ago scheduled a meeting for September 30th, which was then subsequently changed to a national holiday, and every organization faced different challenges in how to deal with it. And with being this close to the election, it was tricky to reschedule. So we decided to instead, prior to the meeting kicking off, we had a smudge and a prayer with an elder from around Grant Cache, and it was extremely special. In addition, just congratulating Nancy Robbins, the general manager, for 10 years. To be 10 years with rotating boards that are fully made up of elected officials is impressive. And with that in mind, we actually talked a lot about board diversity and how an election for a board like Community Futures could cause a huge amount of disruption because you could lose, a huge portion of the board. So beyond that, there's a missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls night last night at the Friendship Center. It was quite special, and again, this year is really unique for our Indigenous community, and just great to have people together and share and have some really difficult conversations, but really meaningful and important ones. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. So I'm pretty excited to report that it sounds like I'm going to have one more Beaver Boardwalk Committee meeting where we can hand off the duties to the newly named Citizen Beaver Boardwalk Committee. That's something that our BBO committee has been working towards for a long time. I'm glad the day is finally here, and that's a wonderful list of names that were put forward tonight. And I think they're going to do a great job, and I wish them the best of luck. Other than that, I have nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. And with everything that's been mentioned, nothing for myself to add. And Council, any urgent matters? Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, one of the things that came out in the news over the last few days is that the Bighorn coal mine is once again going to be subject to a federal review after meeting with some communities, especially Indigenous communities. And I was just curious if Mayor Michaels, you were able to meet with Minister Wilkinson and lobby for that federal review to not be reinstated.
I have not yet.
Okay. I guess we can figure that out later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Race, did you have the urgent matter?
No, I was just listening intently.
Perfect. Council, any further urgent matter? Seeing none, CAO, Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. So I, just off the top, I do want to extend a thank you to the staff and to council and the community for the support. Excuse me, quite emotional. In the last week, it's been excellent and much appreciated. Second to that, we did have our first advanced poll on Monday. There were 344 people who voted. So Ms. Rendell and her team were kept steady, busy. So that's great, a good first day. We have a couple more, of course, advanced poll dates coming up October 7th and October 13th from 8 to 4 at the People's Center. So as a reminder for that, ahead of the election on the 18th. Sorry, 10 to 8. What did I say? 8 to 4, okay. I'm looking right at 10 to 8 written right here. Thank you. And that's all I have, unless council has any other questions on any matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Any questions, council? Seeing none, any administrative inquiries tonight? Seeing none, any notices of motion? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session with a 5-minute recess. Councillor Hawes.
I make the motion to go into closed session, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Man, I don't know. I think it's because I heard Graham say it that it.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to reconvene this meeting at 7 p.m. Council, direction? Councilor McGoon?
Yeah, I'd like to begin with, if we can bring up the motions that have been written down.
Would it be helpful if I read it?
Yeah, start with the standing, please. I'd like to move that council change the standing committee meeting of October 12th, 2021 to a regular meeting of council.
Thank you, Councilor McGoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council, any questions or debates with the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council change the standing committee meeting of October 12th, 2021 to a regular meeting of council. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. If I can ask administration to bring up the other motion.
No.
Thank you, administration. Council, is there appetite to move this motion? Councilor Hawes.
I'd like to move the council appoint Laura Howarth as the interim CEO ending October 12th, 2021, please.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Council, any questions, debate, comment? Councilor McGoon?
Just for clarification, Mr. Mayor, this question I suppose is for you. It's fair to categorize this as just a matter of doing diligence on the behalf of council?
Absolutely. One extra week to get the contract in order. And for the public who are watching, the previous motion is tied to that. In order to give that direction that would potentially be needed on the 12th, it would have to be a regular meeting of council, and that extra week should have the contract in place.
Perfect. And if I could then just take a moment to again express my appreciation for the work that Ms. Howarth has done with administration to this point. I thank you so much, Laura. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you, Councilor McGoon, and I think council echoes those sentiments, so thank you, Ms. Howard, for that. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any further debate? Seeing none. Oh, Councilor Nelson.
Sorry, Mr. Could I maybe just ask for a friendly amendment? Instead of it being ending, just have it be through. Then it denotes that it's till the end of October 12th, and then doesn't signal that that we're ending it then.
Councilor McGoon, are you okay with that?
That was Councilor Hawes.
Councilor Hawes.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, I actually felt weird on that ending too, so thank you for that.
Okay, thank you for that, Councilor Nelson. Councilor Hawes, Council, we have a amended motion that has been changed. Any further debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question that council appoint Laura. I'd like to move that council appoint Laura Howarth as interim chief administrative officer through October 12th, 2021. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Councilor Nelson.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good night.
No. That was a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff in 3 hours.
3 hours.
We've got a lot of time. We've covered one thing.